Ever have one of those days where you spill coffee on your shirt, stub your toe, and your Wi-Fi cuts out, and you think to yourself, this is it. This is the worst day ever. Well, allow me to introduce you to history's long and decorated list of ways to have a truly bad day. Let's start in medieval London. Imagine you've been a bit of a naughty boy, and you get sent to the Tower of London. But you're not going to the fancy rooms. No, you're going to the basement, to a special little spot called the Rat Dungeon. It's dark, you're chained up, and it's right next to the river. Now, this isn't a riverfront property with a lovely view. This is a dungeon built just below the waterline. So when the tide comes in, guess who gets evicted from their riverside homes? All the local rats. And where do they go for shelter? That's right, into your new apartment. At first, you just hear a few scurrying sounds in the pitch black, then a few more. Soon, it's a furry, squeaking carpet of angry, hungry rats. And you're the all-you-can-eat buffet. They'd just nibble on you for days or weeks until you either went insane or just stopped moving. It was a real five-star experience. But maybe you're not a fan of rats. Maybe you prefer a more hands-on approach. Well, say hello to the rack. This thing looked like a ladder built by a sadist. They'd tie your hands to one end and your feet to the other. Then two officials would start turning these cranks, slowly pulling you in opposite directions. It's like the world's worst yoga session, where the goal is to hear all your joints pop like bubble wrap. This was usually to get a confession. The problem was, after a few turns, people would confess to anything. Did you steal the jewels? No. Crank. Okay, I stole the jewels, and I'm a wizard, and I taught the king's horse how to sing opera. Just make it stop. Sometimes it worked. Other times they'd torture you more for lying. A woman named Anne Askew went through this just for reading the Bible with her friends. Her own husband turned her in. Talk about a messy divorce. They stretched her until all her joints were dislocated, leaving her paralyzed. Then they carried her out on a chair and burned her at the stake, all because she wouldn't name her friends. If you were a sailor, you got your own special brand of horror, keel hauling. This was for thieves or troublemakers on a ship. They'd tie a rope to your hands, loop it all the way under the ship, and tie the other end to your feet. Then they'd toss you overboard, and a bunch of your shipmates would start pulling. You'd be dragged down one side of the ship, scraped along the bottom, and pulled up the other. Now, the bottom of an old wooden ship wasn't smooth. It was covered in sharp, jagged barnacles. You were basically being turned into human Parmesan cheese, all while drowning and probably breaking your neck on the keel. If by some miracle you survived, you had three options. Round 2, which you definitely wouldn't survive, get let back on the ship to die slowly from 1,000 infected cuts, or live the rest of your life looking like a walking roadmap of scars. But let's move on to something with a bit more pageantry. How about being crushed by an elephant? This was a popular form of execution in parts of Asia, especially India, as recently as the 19th century. And what did you have to do to earn this fate? Well, failing to pay your taxes was a good one. Stealing an apple? That'll do it. One emperor was apparently just bored one day and ordered a whole bunch of criminals to be crushed for his entertainment. The guy who jaywalked? Crushed. The man who committed unspeakable horrors and made a delicious soup out of his neighbor? He was fine. The soup was apparently to die for. There were a few ways this could go down. The quick way was having your head placed on a block and splat, like a grape. The crueler way was having the elephant walk over your body. Sometimes it would miss the vital organs on the first pass, crush a leg, and have to do a little U-turn to try again. And for the grand finale, a highly trained elephant would crush you limb by limb, saving your head or chest for last. All while a guy sat on top of the elephant just to show everyone how in control the rulers were. Now, if you thought that was gross, I'd like to introduce you to impalement. This one is a lot. They'd lay you face down, make a little incision in your back door, and then grab a long wooden stake, about as thick as a man's arm. They'd grease it up to, facilitate the process, and then start hammering it in with a mallet. The goal was to have it go all the way through your body and come out your shoulder, neck, or mouth, carefully missing your vital organs so you'd stay alive for a while. Then they'd plant you by the side of the road like a horrifying human scarecrow, a warning to everyone else not to steal bread. In some versions, they'd impale you just enough so you couldn't get off, but you wouldn't die quickly. You'd just hang there for hours, begging passers-by for help until you finally bled out. Okay, deep breath, because it gets weirder. Ever heard of poena culi? It's Latin for penalty of the sack. This was a special punishment in ancient Rome reserved for people who murdered a family member. First, they put you in a big leather sack, but you wouldn't be alone. For company, they'd add a dog, a rooster, a live snake, and a monkey. It sounds like the setup to a terrible joke, but the punchline is that they sew the bag shut and throw it into the ocean. I have no idea what the monkey did to deserve that. The Romans were so considerate, though. Later, they gave you a choice, the sack of horrors, or being sent to the Colosseum to be torn apart by wild animals in front of a cheering crowd. Decisions. You know what we haven't talked about enough? Rats. Let's go back to rats. There was a method called, creatively, rat torture. They'd take a clay bowl, put a rat inside it, and place the bowl upside down on your bare stomach or chest. Then they'd start heating the outside of the bowl with a torch. The rat, desperate to escape the heat, has only one way to go, down. It would literally burrow and chew its way into your body to escape the fire. But that's not even the worst rat-related punishment. In Chile, under the dictator Pinochet, they had something they called the rectoscope. I'm just going to let your imagination fill in the blanks on that one. They'd place a tube, somewhere unpleasant, put a rat in the tube, and then ask you questions while it tried to find a way out. Speaking of being put on display, let's talk about gibbeting. This involved putting a person in a tight, human-shaped metal cage and hanging them up in a public place, like by the town well. You couldn't sit, you couldn't move, you were just there, for everyone to see. You'd hang there for days, slowly dying of thirst and exposure, probably begging for a sip of water from the very people you were meant to be a warning to. But the fun didn't stop when you died. Oh no, they just left your body in the cage to rot, for years. Locals would complain that the smell was so bad they couldn't sleep. There are reports of bodies being left in these cages for over 20 years before someone finally remembered to clean them out. You were basically a human wind chime of misery. But for pure, drawn-out psychological agony, nothing beats an ancient Persian method called scathism, or the boats. They take you, tie you down inside a small boat with your arms and legs sticking out. Then they would force-feed you massive amounts of milk and honey. This wasn't a nice last meal. It was designed to give you explosive, uncontrollable diarrhea. They'd also smear your whole body with more honey. Then they'd push you out into the middle of a stagnant lake and leave you. The filth and the honey would attract every insect for miles. Wasps, flies, and bugs would swarm you, biting you and laying eggs in your flesh. Rodents from the shore would swim out to nibble on you. And every single day they would row out, force-feed you more milk and honey to keep the process going, and prolong your suffering for as long as possible. One man reportedly survived for 17 days. 17 days of being slowly eaten alive by bugs while rotting in your own filth. And finally, we arrive at the most chillingly named punishment of all, the oubliette. It's French for to forget, and that's exactly what it was. An oubliette was a tiny, pitch-black cell, often so small you couldn't stand up, sit down, or lie flat. You were just crammed into an uncomfortable position. Then the door was sealed, and you were left, forgotten. You'd die in a few days from dehydration or starvation, but often you weren't alone. You'd be thrown in with the rotting corpse of the last person who was forgotten there. And of course, the dungeon rats would be there to keep you both company. They found one of these in an Irish castle that was filled with so many skeletons it took multiple cartloads to clear them out. Sometimes they'd keep you alive for years, sliding just enough food and water through a slot to keep you breathing. Your cell might even be near the castle halls, so you could hear the sounds of laughter, music, and life going on without you, a life you would never, ever be a part of again. You weren't just being punished, you were being erased. So next time you get a paper cut or your favorite show gets canceled, just take a deep breath and remember, at least you're not in a boat covered in honey waiting for the flies. If you enjoyed this little trip down nightmare lane, do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. And let us know in the comments which one of these you think was the absolute worst. We're curious, in a very disturbed way, to see what you guys think.